Have you ever wondered how worm composting works? How do red wigglers eat so much food? What happens to the food I put in my bin? Well, today's your lucky day. I'm Cathy from Cathy's Crawly Composters. Today we are talking about worm composting and how to set up a worm bin so the worms are happy. Any container will do. You need a lid. This one has holes in the top for air circulation. I'll talk about that later. So, like backyard composting, worms require a carbon-nitrogen mix. The carbon that I use is shredded paper, could be leaves, straw, cardboard, drink trays, egg cartons, paper towel rolls, toilet paper rolls, paper bags even, paper plates, even just newspaper, shredded up. So, any combination of those for your bedding, and the worms eat the bedding too. Then you require about a liter of soil. Just regular garden soil will do. Worms require the microorganisms or grit that are in the soil to break down the food, and then the worms eat the bugs. Then you need to add in some crushed eggshells or agricultural lime. Worms breathe through their skin, so that helps to balance the pH or the acidity so the worms don't get burned. Then enough water, so it's the consistency of a wrung out sponge. Worms are about 90% water, so about 1.5 liters to 2 liters in a bin this size. You mix all your ingredients together, add your worms on top, and then the worms will eat the food. So in a bin like this, you would have a pound or half a pound of worms. This is a pound of worms here, 800 to 1,000 worms in a pound. They're red wiggler worms, and they eat approximately half their weight per day in food scraps. So a pound of worms, half a pound per day, or 3 to 4 pounds per week. This is approximately what a pound of worms can eat in a week. This is just about 3.5 pounds of food. And the more you chop it up, the more exposed surface, the faster it breaks down, the more the worms can eat. So the kind of things that you're putting in your worm bin, all of your fruit and vegetables, coffee, tea, pasta, rice, beans, grains, plant clippings, cereal, well, anyway, the list is endless what can go in. Let me talk about what doesn't go in. No meat, no dairy, no sauce. Much shorter list if you're not sure. Just leave it out. Again, the more you chop it up, the more exposed surface, the faster it breaks down, the more the worms can eat. So let's set this up. Here we go. So we're going to start with our container. It's, well, right now about 3/4 full of fluffy, dry, shredded paper. And any kind of paper is fine. You want to stay away from newsprint. Or from, you want to stay away from magazine paper because of the glossy thing. That's really the only thing. Newsprint is better than bond paper or the photocopy paper. Brown shredded towels from the schools are wonderful. And any of those, the drink trays or egg cartons, just dunk them in a bucket of water. They smush really nice because they're pretty coarse fibers. So then we want to make our bedding moist. Again, about 1.5 liters to 2 liters of water. We want to get the bedding all wet. Worms. So we've added about 3/4 of a bottle of a 2-liter bottle of water. And now we're just going to mix it all together and make sure it's all moist. Again, the worms are about 90% moisture and so require a fairly moist environment. But they can't swim, so we need to make sure all the pools of water are sopped up so the water's nice and moist. And then we're going to add in about 1 liter of soil. Just regular garden soil. The worms don't have teeth, so there's little bugs in the soil that are going to help break down the food. And then, of course, the worms eat the bugs. So we'll mix that in. And then crushed eggshells. So eggshells from about 6 to 8 eggshells is perfect. And it doesn't need to be too finely crushed up. Just the finer it is, the better. So a couple of handfuls of crushed eggshells, if you've got them stored up. Okay, and then you mix all your ingredients together so they're nicely all mixed in. Because the worms, there's a myth that the red wiggler worms live in soil like night crawlers, but they don't. They actually live in organic matter. They require the microorganisms and grit that are in the soil to break down the food, and then the worms eat the bugs. So this feels, oh, it feels perfect. Here we go. So you do a little squeeze test. A few drops should come out, and then it's moist enough for the worms. So there we go. We fluff it up a little bit. The worms like it fluffy. Here we go. And then you just add your worms right on top. Let's just get the worms here. So in a bin like this, you would have a pound or half a pound of worms. This, here we go. So here's just a little handful of worms just to show. Those are the red wigglers. And so there we go. So in they go. So now when you're feeding, so your bin would be all set up. The worms would, you would just let the worms settle in naturally, and then when you were going to feed your worms, you would pull back the bedding, add your chopped up food scraps in the hole that you've made, make sure that it's covered, and then rotate around the bin. After about 3 to 5, if you have a pound of worms, again, you would be feeding approximately this much per week. The more you chop it up, the more exposed surface, the faster it breaks down, the more the worms can eat. You're adding additional paper, and after about 3 to 5 months, rotating around the bin, the worms will convert all of this. So the paper plus the food scraps equals this here. And so this is about 3.5 months. After about 3 to 5 months, the worms convert the paper and food scraps into this, and it's time to harvest. There's still worms here. This is mostly converted worm castings or worm poo. You can see there's still some recognizable bits. At this point, it's time to harvest or separate the worms in the cast. So how you would do that, there's a few different methods. The easiest method is called the dump and sort. You dump your bin on a plastic sheet, put it in round piles. The worms are photosensitive or afraid of the light, so they go down into the piles. You just let them sit for a little while, let nature work for you, and then you just scoop off the top section of each pile. Any bits that are recognizable, bits of paper or fruit bits, vegetable peels, you could add that back in. The worms will get it next time around. Keep scooping away, setting your castings aside. Castings is a fancy word for worm poo, the fertilizer that you're looking for your plants. The worms will go away from the light naturally. You can see here there's a little mountain of worms, and so they all clump together because they don't like the light. So you take out those worms. Hopefully you've got your bedding all prepared already, and you add the worms into the bin, and they start working. Fabulous, beautiful things that they are. Wonderful. So then you use the castings to fertilize your plants, and this is how we package our castings. Comes in assorted flavors. This one's so good. Has a handy pour spout, so you just pour it out. You just top dress your plants and gently work it in. It's water soluble, it won't burn your plants. It'll just add the nice nutrients back in and the microorganisms, and your plants will just breathe a sigh of relief and give you awesome blooms. So that's Vermicomposting 101. I'm Cathy Nesbitt from Cathy's Crawly Composters.